What's up? What's
What's
up?
up?
What's
What's
up?
up? How we doing, guys?
Bolt Bros
All
are
right.
here. We got a little special guest with us.
Absolutely. The one and only Mark Lane. All right, guys. And so we are, as you guys are piling in, real quick sound check. Aether, how do we sound?
All right. Yeah, Ether is one of our regulars. Yo, hey, what's up, DZ? Hey, DZ.
Hey, DZ, we got to take our lumps.
Yeah. Oh man, so DZ is one of our regular guys. Yeah, I don't look like a Mexican baker right now today, do I? Oh,
All
yeah,
right,
Mark. Yeah, very good. Oh, we're very God right now. That's right. I
Very
like
God.
that.
That's awesome. Good job. Thanks, Aether.
All right.
All
Well,
righty,
great.
guys. So excellent. We've got Mark Lane as our special guest. Mark, why don't you give us a little background of who you are, how you're affiliated with the Texans, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, so I'm the managing editor of the Texans Wire. It's a USA Today sports property. You can find it at texanswire.usatoday.com. And we've got one for the Chargers too, chargerswire.usatoday.com. Gavino Borquez does an excellent job over there. So I've been managing editor since 20. I've been covering the Texans since 2017, and that's basically where my knowledge of the team comes from. And I've been covering the NFL since 2013, and that's basically it.
Excellent. You don't have a podcast, do you? You don't have anything like that?
We have the Texans Talk podcast that you can find on that's on Texans Wire. We try to do that every Wednesday, but hey, I'm here. But so we'll do one Thursday and Friday. I mean Thursday or Friday. We always do one once a week. My co-host John Crum, myself.
That's
excellent.
Great. Awesome. I like that. That's cool. Like, we'll have to tune in one of these days, because I actually do like to listen to the other opposing teams when we actually 100%. Get to play them and stuff like that, so that's really cool.
Yep. Big reason why we started doing this as well too, Mark. We really want to hear the other side of the story because it's so easy to just listen to, drink the Kool-Aid of your team and just assume every other team is horrible because your team is amazing because that's all you study. But, it's always good to hear.
It's like our team is awful because we should not have lost. Because they don't pay their other guys on the other side. They're just doing this pro bono. Our guys are getting paid to do this, and they lost.
Yeah. Well, you guys have had some bad luck for sure. And, the Chargers have as well, too. So, guys, I think the format, what we're going to do today, what we want to do is we want to go really about 20, 30 minutes of just us talking about offense, defense, keys of winning the game, so on and so forth, as we normally do. And then we want to go into your questions. So, guys, ask questions and put in questions in the chat, and we will get to them as well and have a discussion. And, Mark, I just want to make sure I know how much time you have. How much time do you have to be on the pod with us today?
I mean, I expected an hour.
Okay.
How long y'all run, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Okay. Yeah, sounds right.
Just want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, the problem was the time zone. It was like, we start at my brother's in Mountain Standard Time. So I'm thinking Mountain Standard Time. That's got to be Arizona because they don't observe, daylight time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So that's actually 2 hours behind. So let's just go by. Let's pick one time zone, Pacific, and set it for that, and then we'll figure it out. I mean, Greenwich Mean Time here, and then
it's actually called Charger Standard Time.
Right. I'll tell you what I like to do is I like to send memes from the Central Time Zone gang to my friends in the Eastern Time Zone, and it's stuff like, Oh, it's getting late. 9 o'clock, getting late. Time to go to bed. Made by the Central Time Zone game.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, I love it. I love it. Well, why don't we start with this, Mark? Why don't you give us 3 keys of success that you want to see the Texans do to potentially win the game versus the Chargers this week?
One, they got to run the ball, and they might be able to do that, even though Dameon Pierce was on the injury report with a hip injury, and they worked out Abram Smith today at running back, who played at Baylor, who was someone that we liked over at Texans Wire during our draft coverage. They still have to run the football, and hey, they might be able to do it because Rex Burkhead did it last year.
Yes, he did. Don't remind me. Oh my gosh, Mark, all of us Bolt Bros were together in Arizona. We literally wanted to drink a whole bottle of bleach after that game. No idea. It was pretty bad.
Yep.
For as much attention as week 18 got on Sunday Night Football and overtime and all that, I think that was the game that sunk the Chargers.
I agree. 100%.
Because they would have had that, then I don't know how week 18 would have played out, but it wouldn't have been as consequential. Anyway, so they got to run the football because it takes the air out of the ball, keeps Justin Herbert on the sideline, and the fact is the Texans cannot win an offensive showdown with the Chargers. Just cannot happen. So number one, they got to run the football. That doesn't mean, which is what they're doing. All right, this is the Texans run game, okay? It's actually Dameon Pierce is getting dirty yards. He's getting 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but he's turning it into 6 yards, 5 to 6 yards. That's their running game. That's why it looks like, wow, Dameon Pierce has 4.6 yards to carry. I mean, why don't they just keep giving him the ball? It's because the actual run game is not generating those chunk plays, like Khalil Herbert did against them in week 3 when he goes like 57 yards. They're not getting those type of chunk plays out of the run game. Consequently, that means it's up to the passing game to continue to extend drives, and that leads to number 2. The passing game is going to have to be efficient. The completion percentage from Davis Mills, it's going to have to get to 65% at a minimum. He's going to have to start clicking with guys that he hasn't so far in Brandon Cooks. Get O.J. Howard a little bit more involved if you have to. But the passing game, everybody talks about you got to run. That may be true in like 1992, but in today's NFL, the entire game is built around the quarterback and the passing game. So 100%. At some point, you have to pass the ball. I don't care if you have the 2000 Ravens defense reincarnated. I don't care if you have a backfield that features Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, and LaDainian Tomlinson. You have to pass the ball at some point. Although absolutely. LT could, and so could Walter Payton, so you might. But it all comes down to, and the Texans, when it's come down to put up or shut up passing, they haven't. And that's really been the problem in the fourth quarter. Go back to week 1 against the Colts. That 17-point comeback by the Colts, unanswered points, by the way, would not have been possible if – they would have got 17, but who cares? But it was the goose egg on the Texans ledger that was the problem. If they would have even had a field goal in the fourth quarter, they could have prevented all of that. But they couldn't score points because the passing game had petered out by that point. So that's number 2. Number 3, I think that they've got to generate pressure, get after Herbert. And I think that they'll be able to do that because Jerry Hughes, he has 4 sacks through 3 games. He only had 2 through 17 in his last year with Buffalo. So he's revitalized playing for his hometown team. They also have Rasheem Green, who came over from the Seattle Seahawks, who's been doing a good job. So I think that they'll be able to get their sacks, but they've got to stop the run as well. They can't let Austin Eckler just, have his chunk plays and so forth from the run game, or even in that short passing game. And those are really Houston's keys to victory. If they try to play the Chargers game, they will lose, and it will look. I actually wrote in USA Today Sports Weekly, I predicted 34-16, and I said, who wins and why. I put, that basically Los Angeles wins 34-16, and it's because they're built more for the modern NFL. Houston's built more for 1992, and they're just going to outpace them at the coin toss. So that's really how I see the game going, just based on what I've seen from Houston the past 3 weeks. So, 34-16 Chargers.
Well, you're more optimistic than I am. I tell you what, Mark. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for the vote of confidence, because both me and my brothers here were like, I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, and you have to remember, right? We got our asses kicked. Kyle and I were at the game, the Jags game. Yep. Literally, I wanted to jump off the top of SoFi Stadium after that game. Holy smokes! Having said that,
I wanted to have a little bit more bottles of bleach after that one, for sure.
Some more jungle juice.
That's why I got my glasses on right now. I'm legally blind.
No, but you know what? Let's talk a little bit about your defense. And I know we could go into this a little bit. You got Desmond King, and you're right. Jerry Hughes is doing great this year. I'm going to talk about a couple of things on the offensive side that you talked about as far as pressures are concerned. And this is some information for folks that are on the call or on this thread right now for the Chargers. Just so you know, it looks as if Corey Linsley is a game time decision. So I think he probably will go. Our all-pro center will go. What they're doing, though, is they're going to move Jamari Sawyer, our rookie that we got from Georgia. He will be the left tackle, and they're going to move Trey Pipkins to the right tackle. So that was announced today. So as far as pressures are concerned, you're going to go up against some guys that don't have a lot of experience, Mark. I'll tell you that much right now, right? So Sawyer is a rookie. I think he was a 5th-round pick out of Georgia, I believe, something like that. Big dude. Really big guy. I mean, he's 330, 340, something like that. But they feel confident with him on the left side. So could be interesting for you. The pressures could be interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to see that battle.
Conspiracy theorist, but I have noticed, and I haven't done my work yet this week. Actually, I should share it with you guys when I get done with it this week. I actually do a thing called Texans 100, where I do 100 facts about the Texans and their opponent for the week. And I always have a segment in there, a section, looking at the referee, looking at the crew, because I'll tell you what, I have been tracking since 2015, and I think the guys at NFL Penalties have picked up on this, and they're doing it with all the penalties now, which is good. But since 2015, on my own count, I'm naughty and nice among the crews, among offensive holding.
Nice.
And some sacks are up when this crew's calling the games, and sacks are down. So I'll be interested to see who they also move on the game. Because, for example, now I've not looked at this year yet, but historically, Bill Vinovich, his crew hardly calls anything at all. And then you get someone like Ed Hockley's son, they call everything. They call penalties. I thought about holding on the sideline, unsportsmanlike conduct, So I'll be interested to see who they move on the game, because that could also, I think, help the Chargers offensive line situation. Because if they move a crew that overlooks holding, that could help you guys out. If they move someone that's a little more stringent, then you get dinged with a holding and you get backed up on a drive, and then now we're looking at a different game one that the Texans might be able to keep up with.
Yeah, and you're right. Like I think Mark, what you were getting at on the keys
By
to
the way, let me
success.
just clarify, for example, when I talk about the refs and all this kind of stuff, I'm talking about in terms of an element, the same way you would talk about the weather
Yep.
affecting a game. I'm not saying that the refs are actually controlling the outcome of the game.
100%.
I'm talking
100%.
about this is kind of like the ground rules of this particular week.
Yep. No, you're exactly right. And you brought up a really good point about the refs. I've always been frustrated when one or two plays affects the game, right? And it's a marginal call, right? I was just thinking about interception Asante Samuel Jr. got against the Chiefs, where he caught the ball, kind of repositioned it, fell on the ground. Well, they didn't call it an interception, right? And so there was a lot of things like that against the Chiefs. It could have changed and swayed that game, but it was overturned. But that's just part of the game, unfortunately, right? You have to deal with the refs, and they're human beings, right? Human beings make mistakes. Let me ask this question. You guys got a lot of injuries, okay? I'm looking at your injury list. Kyle and I were complaining about the injuries that we are experiencing here on the Chargers. And, it hurts us, especially because these are our expensive players that we have brought in to hopefully make a Super Bowl run. So, the Keenan Allens, the JC Jacksons, I mean, these are top dollar guys, right? Corey Linsley, obviously Joey Bosa's having surgery. But you guys got a lot of injuries, man. So maybe walk us through a few of your injuries that are really going to affect you guys. I mean, the one that sticks out to me is Brandon Cooks. Is he going to play? I mean, he's probably your number one wide receiver.
What does your injury report say? Like, it just shows Brandon Cooks didn't practice?
Yeah, didn't practice. Yeah.
All right. Let's get the real injury report then.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. Now, mine, I'm again not trying to be a big shot or anything, but mine's from the actual teams. Okay. And it says Brandon Cooks, not injury related rest. Jerry Hughes, not injury related rest. So those guys being on the did not participate list. That's why. And Hughes, that's kind of what they've been doing with him on Wednesdays.
Okay.
So I don't know. This one I think is worth watching is Dameon Pierce with the hip, limited participation, because today they worked out two running backs.
Oh, they did.
So why are they
Interesting.
doing that? That's why I think that you should take it. That's the one worth monitoring throughout the week. Brevin Jordan with the ankle. They're a tight end heavy offense. Maybe you look at that. He was inactive last week. Malik Collins, the starting defensive tackle, 3 technique. He's on there with a knee, but this is comparable to his injury report in week 3, but nevertheless monitor it, because what if on Thursday he also doesn't practice it? Even though week 3, Thursday, he was limited. So those are really the two I would look at, is Malik Collins and Dameon Pierce. So those are the injuries worth watching on the Texans injury report.
Interesting. Okay. That's interesting. That's good to know, because I was looking on that list. I was like, oh my God, that is a huge list. So I'm glad you clarified. So it's not as bad as it looks. That's good for me to know, because we were Kyle and I were talking about it quite a bit. So I know we talk a little bit, and again, one of the other things we want to discuss, let's talk about your offense a little more too. Davis Mills, your quarterback, where do you feel like he's progressing? What does he do well? What doesn't he do? I know you talked a little bit about his efficiency. That seems to be a little bit of a problem that he's having right now. Do you think that's a wide receiver issue? Do you think that's a pass protection issue? Do you think it's a mixture of everything? What's your general thoughts on Davis Mills and gelling with his offense as well?
I think Davis Mills said it last year. He said that you can't go broke turning a profit when explaining why he checked down so much. And I think that that's actually a really good strategy for his older sister that's in wealth management. As a quarterback in the NFL, gets you beat, because the game is built around the quarterback taking a risk at some point. That's why with the Texans quarterback situation of recent, the quarterback, the game went through him. Whether win or loss, you knew that the quarterback position was going to be the deciding factor
100%.
in why you won or lost. Sometimes in Chicago, in like week, I think it was 14 of 2020, he sucks. Other times, December the 1st, 2019, week 13, Sunday Night Football at NRG Stadium, and they beat the Patriots. Well, that's why. It's because of quarterback play. And that's the thing with Mills is he's not factoring in to the equation either way. It's almost like he wants to avoid blame. Now, I think that's good for a backup quarterback, but for a starting quarterback, that's just
doesn't cut it.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I think that is what would get him replaced is, and I'm talking looking long term and so forth. I don't think Kyle Allen and Jeff Driscoll are gonna replace him this season unless he gets injured. But just long term, when you look at a franchise quarterback, those are not the makings of a franchise quarterback. Those are the makings of a backup. Because take a look, for example, with the Cowboys and Cooper Rush.
Yep, Cooper Rush. Yeah.
He's letting the ground game and the defense kind of dictate the tenor of the game, and he doesn't make mistakes. And that's good. But the thing with Houston is they don't have a ground game. They don't have a good defense. They need a catalyst from somewhere. And if it's not coming from quarterback, then – and that's why Herbert was so fun to watch. His rookie season was the Chargers were kind of trash, but he at least was keeping them in ball games. He was the
gunslinging it.
That they even had a chance or didn't. And that's the thing with Mills is he's not a deciding factor in a game built around the quarterback position.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point around that. We're lucky we have Herbert. We've talked about this 100 times over, but we got to protect him, and we've had a lot of injuries on the line. But that's not only affected our ability to pass the ball down the field, especially with Herbert's injury, his rib cartilage, right? So interesting. I'll give everybody a little bit of an update on that today too. Brandon Staley talked about it. I've been reading a lot of articles. Brandon Staley said they're trying to work Justin Herbert into a rhythm, right? So I don't think he threw balls today. I think he's going to throw it tomorrow. And he's just got to deal with this rib injury. He wants as much rest as possible. Having said that, I think he's an X factor. He's always going to give you a chance to win in the fourth quarter. But boy, Brandon Staley got a lot of heat keeping him in the game. 39-10. Pretty much the game was over in the fourth quarter. Why was he out there, right? If you want to rest him, we'll rest him, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they manage that moving forward. I did want to ask you one thought, though, on our defense compared to your offense. You obviously know Joey Bosa's out. So we're going to have a guy named Rumpf. He's came from Duke. He's going to be an edge rusher. Also, Kyle Van Noy, from the Patriots, will be also taking some edge rushing responsibilities as well. We did sign another linebacker for depth, but you'll see Drew Tranquil, the usual suspects. So we're going to be rotating a lot of our edge rushers. How's the Texans done at stopping the pass rush compared to Mills? Is he getting sacked a lot? What's sort of that looking like specifically as far as, in the trenches on the offensive line?
Yeah, I think the pass rush has been okay for Davis Mills. He's had time to throw. He only got sacked once against the Bears. The Broncos, they've got more of a ferocious defense as we've seen. They generated 3 sacks against him, and then you've got Indianapolis, the game that went on forever and ended in a tie. He gave up 3 sacks in that particular contest. He's just I don't think that it'll be that big of an issue because the problems with Houston's offensive line, is more so related to the center.
Okay.
They decided to go with Justin Britt at starting center, and he was the Seattle Seahawks center for 2014 to 2019 when he tore his ACL, took 2020 off just trying to come back from it. In 2021, it was his first full year, but even so, he missed time because of his knee, and he basically stepped away from the game for a little bit after week 1. And now they're just in a pickle at center, starting Scott Casenberry. They have the former Raiders 2021 7th-round pick, Jimmy Morrissey, as a reserve. So center's just not exactly at that interior there. Then you've got Kenyon Green from Texas A&M, the first-round pick, who's getting his reps and so forth. So I think if they can get interior pressure, that'll help. But on the edges, I think Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard have done a serviceable job.
Okay. No, it's good to know, and I do think, again, it still sort of remains to be seen who will be playing as far as corners are concerned. I know J.C. Jackson probably will play. I guess Kyle, wasn't James saying that Brandon Staley essentially forced him to play on week 2 versus the Chiefs and against his general wishes, right? So there's some guys, let's be very clear. There's some conversations around knives are out for Brandon Staley already in week 3. And so it's really interesting seeing how the fall from grace in coaching has become kind of an issue. I'm probably going to do a video on it tomorrow as well, guys. So stay tuned for that. I saw some interesting, conversations around that, but I do think Keelan Allen is probably going to play. And I do think Donald Parham might play as well too. It sounds like they're both in limited practice. I do think that we'll play. We'll be fairly good as far as injuries concerned, right? I think J.C. Jackson Herbert will play, obviously. Corey Linsley, if he's out there. So how does Houston look on the corners, right, as far as giving up big plays, chunk plays? I know I'm looking at the statistics on this. There's a name that I recognize. Our boy Desmond King, who I really was annoyed that the Chargers let go. So he's actually running cornerback for you folks. I mean, talk us a little bit about some of your secondary, and how do you think they stack up with the Chargers offensively or defensively, I should say?
Yeah, I think Derek Stingley, he's coming into his own.
Yep.
Steven Nelson plays opposite. He's a pretty good boundary corner. And Desmond King, they kind of use in the slot. They do kind of a good job. Really, it's Jalen Petrie, the safety, that has been dynamic on the back end because he just knows how to fake like he's playing man and then drop back in its traditional cover 2. And so I think that the Chargers receivers, they'll be able to get their plays against Nelson and Stingley, but it won't be like, a track meet type of thing. I don't believe. So Stingley, we noticed he was the real deal in training camp when he just started like breaking up stuff on Brandon Cooks. When he just graduated from guys like, Chris Moore and Chris Conley. And now he's swatting stuff away intended for Brandon Cooks. So I think with the more reps he gets, he'll really develop. Right now, I think he's just kind of starting level quality,
Okay.
So he's not a sieve, in other words.
Got it. And maybe we should touch a little bit on special teams as well, too. I was kind of looking at your statistics. I know we're definitely improving special teams. At least our punting is. Maybe talk a little bit about that because, obviously these games can come down to that as well, too. So how are your special teams stacking up this season from what you're seeing? And give us a little bit of a rundown on that.
Yeah, they've really been solid. Frank Ross has done a good job of making sure that the transition phase of the game doesn't cost Houston. I think Kymie Fairbairn's missed one field goal this
Yep.
season, so
Yep.
he's getting back to his old self. You know, I mean, at some point he's got to earn that contract extension Bill O'Brien gave him.
Yep. Sure.
So,
Yep.
So there, it's serviceable. Tremont Smith, he's been able to get some good returns. Desmond King, that's also why they really like having him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He's a threat to bust one, maybe not for a touchdown per se, but to just set up the offense and give them a short field. And so I don't think they've given up too much. And I don't think that they're, like I said, they're not a sieve. I don't think that it's a vulnerability, but it's barely an advantage, if that makes any sense. Like, I think that they could be a threat to have a decent return, or decent, tackle the guy inside the 7-yard line type of thing with an ill-advised return as opposed to a fair catch. Pinning people inside their own 5. But, yeah, that's where I see the Texans special teams.
So I know, and I got one last thought. I know the takeaway margin is so big. And, you guys right now are currently +2 in the takeaway margins from what I can tell. And the Chargers are at 0. We were at +2 going into the Jags game. And the Jags are actually leading the league right now in +7 in turnovers. So, I mean, walk us through that a little bit, right? What kind of defense are they specifically running? And is there any other kind of information you can give us as far as the takeaways are concerned? How is that a point of emphasis in training camp and, obviously in practice and kind of so on and so forth?
What's the point of getting a takeaway if you don't do anything with it?
It's a good point. Yes. The truth, you got to score on those, right? You got to capitalize. 100%.
Like those commercials they had for the electric cars last year where, oh, yeah, well, I got a gas card here. What am I going to do with it? It's kind of like that. Because last week, and this is why they lost, Jalen Petrie gets 2 interceptions.
Yep.
And all they had to show for it was a goose egg.
Yeah. Yep.
2 interceptions and no points off of it. Not even one field goal. Nothing. And so that's really the problem is, yeah, defense is doing their job. They're getting the extra possessions, but really takeaways, unless you're cashing in on them, I mean, they just kind of make your defense look good. It's like having a really loud muffler on your purported hot rod, but you got a V underneath. I mean, it's really like that.
Yeah, putting a straight pipe on a Honda Civic, it doesn't really do a whole lot.
Right. What are we doing here?
Yeah, you're exactly right. Right. And that's a big part of it.
So yeah, but I think in terms of opponents looking at it, yeah, that means Houston's defense is going to come up with one, and you better watch out.
Yep.
And they're not screw around in the red zone or something. But in terms of the actual economy of takeaways, I think Houston's not doing a good job with them because they're not cashing in on them.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting points off takeaways, I mean, it's like, why even – it's like delaying the inevitable, in other words. You're not actually winning the game. You're just postponing the loss.
Yeah.
So,
dang. I actually really like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's where the Texans takeaways are right now. Oh, and by the way, you cannot call them turnovers because Lovie Smith seriously will he won't scold you or anything, but he'll make fun of you, literally, in the press.
Oh, really?
If you call it a turnover. So
what does he call
takeaways in Houston.
Takeaways.
Yeah, which is then confusing because then as an editor and I'm writing observations about the game. Texans takeaways. Wait, I'm not talking about turnovers. I got to rename that. I'm talking observations.
Takeaways. I like that.
Observations about the takeaways.
So, guys, throw your questions out there as well too. I know there's a lot of comments coming in as well too, but if you guys have some questions that specifically want to be addressed by Mark or Kyle and myself, let us know. So before we go into some of the questions, I wanted to kind of give everybody a little bit of an update on the injuries with the Chargers. I know we talked about it briefly a few seconds ago. I know a lot of people are really wanting to know where we're at. I'm just going to go down the list. I would just say this. Keenan Allen, I think will definitely play. You listen to Brandon Staley's, comments today. I think he'll definitely play. Obviously, Justin Herbert will play. That should not be a problem. I do think J.C. Jackson will play as well too. Kyle, you feel confident in that, or what's your thoughts on that?
That J.C. Jackson will play? Yeah, I really feel like he's in this time, and I think this is more his choice that he wants to play this time.
Yeah, I think so.
And at this point, I mean, it's already been about 4 weeks.
Yep.
Now with his surgery and stuff, and so he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be in fair shape now, and hopefully feeling good. And honestly, like I think you and I talked about it a little bit, and I think the reason why he actually joined the Chargers is because the Chargers were going to allow him to do this surgery.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You got to wonder, and then and the timing of the surgery right before the season starts was just kind of perplexing. Is what it is, right? But it sounds like Corey Linsley's trending positive, and Donald Parham, our tight end, most likely will be there. Look, and one of the things I want to say before we start going into some questions and highlighting some discussion points, I've said this over and over again, and this is one thing, Mark, I want to talk to you about too as well. Keenan Allen is really our third down target. It's really Justin Herbert's safety blanket, but the other person I would say is also Donald Parham. Donald Parham is a very tall tight end. I mean, he's what, 6'6", right, Kyle? Something of that nature. I mean, the man's just a tree out there.
Yeah,
he's 6'8". He's a tree, right? So he's an absolute matchup nightmare, and so he's great in the red zone. He's great in third down. He just throw him a 50-50 ball up in the air. He's got a pretty good chance of getting it. Nobody can really defend him at that point, or if they do, it's a PI. We got him from the XFL, so it's kind of interesting seeing him out there. So I think we'll be hopefully fairly healthy. I mean, a lot of these guys will definitely be a game time decision. So, I think there you go, DZ. He is a giraffe. I mean, he's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not super quick, but but he's a nice matchup switch up. So walk me through a little bit about, what your thoughts are on third down and kind of how you're going to handle your third downs, moving forward. Mark, have you been pretty efficient at that, sustaining drives, or has that been a big, sticky factor for you folks specifically?
You're talking about is the defense?
Oh, offense. Sorry, your offense moving forward.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, the problem's been the pass.
Yep.
I mean, you can't pass on third down, then you're toast. That's really what Houston's been, is when it's I mean, and it even goes to second down. It's just when they choose to pass the ball, the chemistry, the efficiency, the execution hasn't been there, and then it's cost them. And so that's really where I look at Houston on third downs. It's all related to the passing game.
Let me ask this. Do you think this is a problem with your offensive scheme, quarterback? What do you think is struggling in that regard? Because the Chargers are dealing with that as well too. We're not efficient in third down currently right now. And I think a big part of it, again, as I already highlighted, is Keenan and also Donald Parham. I really hope Gerald Everett, our other tight end, was going to be that third down guy. And he just really hasn't been up to this point. They haven't gelled yet and gotten rhythm. What's your thoughts on the Texans as far as offensively just getting into a better rhythm? Because if you look at it statistically speaking, you're giving up 19 points a game. We at least score 19 points a game, but you're only scoring like 16 points a game on average, something of that nature. So, what is it that's holding you guys back?
This is going to sound lame, but I think it's been playing on the road. Because that's what Davis Mills mentioned in his presser today, was how when you play at home, there's not as many surprises in the crowd as, not a factor and all this kind of stuff. I think it's kind of been that. I don't think that they played 2 back-to-back road games, which, by the way, is very challenging for even the best teams in the NFL to.
Sure.
I mean, well, let's put it this way: they can succumb to the 2-game road trip. They could take double L's. It's okay. So with Houston, though, that's been the problem. Is I just think they're a better home team, and I think that there's a good chance that could improve against the Chargers because they are playing at NRG Stadium. So that's really kind of been the issue. And they played in remarkably venues where the crowd gets into it. Chicago, Denver. I think if this were at SoFi Stadium, I don't think Davis Mills would have to worry about the crowd.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
It's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that the Texans are not a very good road team, but honestly, as of last year, the Chargers were a very worse home team than they were a road team. Like, it was completely opposite. Like, we were like, I don't know, we were like maybe 5 of 8 as far as like losing, I guess. We did not win as many games at home as we did on the road, and that was really sad to me.
Yeah,
it's extremely frustrating because as a fan, you show up and you want to see your team play,
right?
But at the end of the day, it is an interesting conversation, right? The Chargers are a very unique team, right? Fan base, so on and so forth. So let's go into some questions. And what questions do we have here, Kyle? And then we can start going from there. I know we got about a little over 20 minutes left here, a little under 20 minutes. Let's go into some questions.
All right,
and guys, keep your questions going, guys, and let's get into it.
Okay, so going back, we had a question from Aether early on. He says, so I have a question for a guest. My question is, are the Texans expecting the Chargers to run the ball or not against the Texans defense?
Yeah, I think that they're factoring it in because it has been part of the problem. And Lovie Smith talked about that in his post-game presser after they just got gashed by the Bears. He said generally that happens because players aren't trusting the scheme or they're trying to do too much. So I think that I think the Texans know that that's a weakness of theirs, and that the Chargers are going to try to exploit it. And we'll see if they can shore that up or if it's going to be poor Derek Stingley, who did nothing but his job, getting posterized by Khalil Herbert. Like, that's not his fault. He shouldn't be on the poster. It should be like Roy Lopez for not maintaining gap integrity or something. It shouldn't be poor Derek Stingley, the last line of defense, getting posterized.
You bring up a really good point because that's, again, the Chargers have had a hard time stopping the run, and this year actually, we've showed flashes of brilliance, but we've also showed some very big gash runs. The one that I'm going to bring up, Kyle, as you remember that 4th and 1, they went for it. What was that, like a 40-yard rush? And it blew the stats out. We're actually doing very well up to that exact moment. Yeah. And it was a dagger in our heart, right? And we were done after that. And so the team essentially gave up. But just what you talk a lot about integrity, and a lot of people don't really know a whole lot about that, Mark, right? Because that's important. Like the defensive linemen, they're not really there to get to the quarterback in most cases. I mean, you look at someone like, oh my God, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Aaron Donald, right, for the Rams, right? He gets to the quarterback, but he's a freak of nature. I mean, that guy could be double teamed and still make it to, the quarterback with gap integrity. But that's a big part of it, right? Is stopping the run, is having a fat guy blocking that lane and just jamming those running lanes so they can't run the ball outside the backfield. So it's really interesting that you're seeing it that way as well too. And it's something the Chargers look, last year we were horrible at. This year we've been good at, but then we've had these moments where we just get gashed for just ridiculous amounts of yards. And so it would be very interesting to see how we handle that. Because I think if we could stop your run and then put the ball in Davis Mills' hands, to your point, that's exactly where we want you guys for sure.
Yeah. All right. So next question. You ready?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. So we got one from Nick Samarikov. Why can't the Chargers stop the run? And why are we terrible at running ourselves?
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a really tough question.
Well, it goes back to
at least on our side. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes back to what I was saying, and exactly what Mark illustrated is gap integrity, right? The whole point of Brandon Staley's defense is to blow up the A gap, blow up the B gap, give them nothing to run through, right? And if you can do that, and the edge rushers keep them contained and pushed back into the defensive lineman, if you can keep that gap integrity, you'll stop the run. But you got guys like Jerry Tillery, who, guess what, does not have any gap integrity. And you look at that 4th and 1, guess where they ran it to? They ran it to Jerry Tillery. He just got moved out of the way. I mean, he was just moved out of the way completely. So he's one of our defensive linemen, Mark, and he's absolutely horrible. Actually, I call him the speed bump. So again, Nick, Mark answer that question as well too. You know, what do you think needs to change on both sides of the ball in this? In fact, what is going on
for Houston?
Yeah, what's going on with Houston?
All right, well, Houston, I mean, they've got to find a way to just get everybody involved in run blocking because, like I said, Dameon Pierce, yeah, you look at his yards per carry and how encouraging is that and so forth. But the reason why he hasn't been your fantasy monster and everything is because he's only getting 30 yards. He's only turning 3 yards in a cloud of dust to 5 to 6 yards. That's it. And so when you're not having chunk plays as a result of that, when he's not getting to posterize opposing cornerbacks, then that's why the run game just isn't as effective, and eventually they got to pass the ball. And it's really the same thing, like I said, with the Texans' run defense is it's been a technique thing. It's been not trusting the system, and it's been kind of a freelancing thing. Or maybe not freelancing, but thinking you have to do somebody else's job and just not trusting the system. So that's what I say.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I think one of the things that I love about football in general is it's a full team sport. What I mean by that is everything has to go right for that play to work, and everyone has to do their job. And when they're not doing their job, guess what? It doesn't work. If you think about it, last year we ran the ball on the left side. On average, we gained 6 yards a carry. Right side, we gained only 3 yards a carry. I've said this a million times. This year, with all the injuries we've had on the line, there's zero consistency on that line. Zero. And so now, even more on top of that conversation, Nick, you got a rookie starting on the left side with another rookie, Zion Johnson, right? And then you got Trey Pipkins on the right, on the left side, not the right side, on the left side. And who knows who our center is going to be in the game, right? And again, the consistency has to be there, right? It's not just Austin Eckler making a play. It's that line opening a hole up and creating those gaps for the running back to run through, right? So again, it's a team sport, right? And I think, stopping the run is the same thing. Is you gotta jam those gaps. So yeah, we've kind of beaten a dead horse on that one. What's the next question here, Kyle?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if anything, the last thing though too is I think our offensive scheme just needs to kind of update too. I mean, and I was gonna say too, I showed a picture to both my brothers. So it was a defensive play as well about us trying to pass rush, but literally all of our offensive line were rushing against only 2 players. It was like it was I think we called it what the huddle up pass rush or something like that. You know?
It was so weird.
Like literally,
what are you doing?
There was like I think it was the left tackle was all by himself, completely just he was just standing there. He's like okay, and then like on the right side, same deal. Like you know, like he was like way off on like right field, just like over there. Like okay. What the hell is this, dude? And Trevor Lawrence had all day. Anyways, that was my rant. I was just so frustrated with that. So
yeah, just no sound gap defense at all.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
Terrible. Okay, so I got one from Shard74. Serious question. Really think about it first. Knowing the type of guy Bosa is, I guess it's for us with the bros here. What do you guys think the chances of Joey Bosa choosing early retirement is? I get more nervous after every injury with him.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Joey's made his money, right? And you can kind of tell. I don't know. You know, it's you got to wonder where he's really at. I actually know quite a few players that have played in the NFL. I know quite a few players who played college football, and after a while they get kind of tired of being hurt. You know, you're just sick of it. You're just sick of it. You're like, I'm just done waking up with, you know, my back hurting and whatever, right? So,
well, and not just like fly from the top rope here, but also it's the rehab routine.
Yeah.
It's being away
That's
from
exactly right. It's exactly right. It's huge.
That by the trainer, you know, the off-season program and stuff. It's that morass too. I think that's why Andrew Luck retired too. Was he's
100%.
I can't do the rehab and all that anymore.
Well, and that's why people start doing steroids, right? So they can fix themselves quicker, you know, quicker. Yeah, they can rehab much faster, you know. But to your point, look, it's a big decision Bosa's going to have to make. I would hope he would want to finish his career with the Chargers. I think that's what he would probably like to do, but I do not think he would re-sign at all. In fact, with this injury, depending on how long he's out, I foresee, and DZ, Tatis Jr. right there. You have no idea. I'm a huge Padre fan as well, and so it's been frustrating seeing that whole situation. But you're exactly correct, right? They're probably going to restructure Bosa's contract because of this injury. He's, as it stands now, depending on how long he stays out, he's going to have definitely an off year statistic wise, right? So, and we got to pay Herbert. You know, we got to sign Herbert this year. So there's going to be some restructuring. So I think that'll all come into play with potentially, you know, having a problem with Bosa being on the team moving forward, right? So that's going to be a really interesting conversation for sure. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of think that he's the kind of a guy that would want to finish out what he started, though. So I think if anything, he could, you know, wait till 2026. Of course, that's 4 more years. That's a lot of years, you know, and playing on this freaking field. You know, I don't know how do you feel about it, Mark, but like, you know, I'm kind of just doing a bunch more deep dive into turf fields, and I'm like, dude, these things got to go. I mean, look at all the injuries that we got. They're all like lower body extremities,
ankles, hips, hamstrings,
knees, hips, you know, all that stuff. That's like there a lot of them non-contact as well, you know. So, I feel like they just wear on you, you know, like these fields that they don't have any give, and like they don't move like grass does, you know. So I don't know. I guess that's a question for me to you actually. It's like, what do you feel about your guys playing on those AstroTurf fields?
I mean, I haven't really noticed that much of a difference, so to speak.
I bring it. We bring it up partially because we were looking at a lot of your injuries on the list here: ankle, foot, ankle, hip.
Right. Those were, but think about it. Those were taken playing on grass at Empower Field and Soldier Field, and the Texans practice on grass too.
Okay, so they do.
So that's why I'm like, I don't know that that's really an issue.
Okay.
Per se. So
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that conversation sparks up. I've seen a lot of people talk about it, and it's something that we've said from we've been monitoring.
Some grass fields, they're trash too if they don't maintain it properly, and guys are slipping and pulling groins. No one would want to talk about it.
Yeah,
in the early 2010s of what absolute mud bog University of Phoenix Stadium was in Glendale or whatever it's called, State Farm Stadium now or whatever. But it was, how's that any different than a whatever problems a turf field can give you?
Yeah, and there's arguments both ways on it as well too. So we thought we'd bring it up. So what's the next question here, Kyle?
Yeah, sure. Okay, next question from the comments. So DC wanted to ask you guys about how's your guys' pass rush for the Texans? Do you think have they been performing well? What do you say?
What's pass rush again?
So I'll take that as an emphatic yeah.
No, it's been doing well. Like I said, Jerry Hughes, he's revitalized his career in Houston. We'll see how that lasts because, it's a 17-game season now.
Right.
But, he's got 4 sacks through the first 3 weeks. Rasheem Green, I believe, has 2.5 sacks, maybe 3. Yeah, I think 2.5, 3 sacks. So they've got the edge rushers. They can get there. Even Jalen Petrie came as a blitzing safety, and he got a sack on Justin Fields. So the pass rush is definitely present for Houston.
You bring up an interesting point that I also do think that it takes, and I said this in one of my last videos. I think maybe it was the offensive line video or the one prior to it. I maintain that it takes at least 4 weeks in the regular season for a team to even remotely find out what they really are, right? And defense usually is always better than the offense, typically. I still think these teams are figuring themselves out, right? And, unfortunately, with some of these injuries, it doesn't make it easier to get a cohesive understanding of what really works well and what really doesn't, right? So, I guess it's nice to start out hot, but, if we're talking about playoffs and a potential Super Bowl run, it's always better to be, getting hot at the end of the season and getting healthy, for a Super Bowl push. So I'm always curious to hear about that as well, too. What other questions we got here, Kyle?
Yeah, so I got one left in queue. I don't know if anyone else has anything else. So if you got one, go ahead and spit it out. But we got Pablo here. He asks, hey, Mark, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the Texans' defensive front seven? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I would say that they're really kind of like a mid. They're kind of like if you were to get on Tinder and you saw someone and you swiped right, and then they swiped right, and then so then you devote to some of the uppers, and then they're not calling messaging you back, and you come back to, hey, what are you doing? They're kind of like that. They're mid.
I like that analogy. That's great.
And that's what I'm saying is that's what the attractive element is. The pass rush. Jerry Hughes, this old man, 34 years old, is getting sacks, okay? And Rasheem Green, who came over from the Seahawks, is continuing that development in his last year in Seattle. And so that, that pass rush is there. But then they've given up running huge rushing yards and everything. And Khalil Herbert's getting 50-yard runs and posterizing Derek Stingley. That's the part where it's just like kind of the beauty uncanny valley of, I don't know. So then that's why you don't just message immediately. So like I said, they're a mid.
Yeah. I love the Tinder analogy. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Great. Okay, so DZ, and then I have one from Aether, and I think that'll probably wrap us up here. So we got DZ asks, how's the morale for the Texans fans so far?
Oh yeah, they're like half are blaming Davis Mills, half are blaming Pep Hamilton. People are already wondering if Nick Casario's the problem, which let me tell you, maybe your organization's the problem if somehow you can get the brains behind the Patriots personnel acquisition throughout their dynasty and can't turn things around. Maybe you're the problem at that point. And no, I don't carry any water for Nick Casario. I did not go to John Carroll University. I'm not on the board of Blue Streak Athletics there, okay? It's just an observation. So that's really, it's a lot of infighting right now among Texans fans. They're trying to figure out who to blame. And there's just, it's like, there's so many options.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Kyle brought up a good point about Tom Telesco.
It's like the Tinder of blame. There's so many options.
Yeah, there you go.
Who am I going to blame it on?
Just swipe them all right. Swipe them all right. Blame everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Kyle and I we were again, just so you know, Mark, we talk all day about football, Chargers typically, and Kyle was talking about how, maybe it's Tom Telesco's problem, right? With some of the personnel issues we've had, some of the injuries, and I'm like, at the end of the day, he's bringing people in and they're talented people, but the coaching staff has to get that group to work, right? And I think that's what's so interesting about Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick, he can get sub-tier players and make them work. And he understands that it's a team game. And I think sometimes coaching staffs have these schemes and say, this is what we're doing, but they don't have the personnel to really execute it. So I think it's a mixture of both of that. But I think also,
a team game in terms of on the field, it's a team game in the building throughout the offseason with your personnel department and your coaching staff working together. Because, it is true that coaches and general managers and so forth come and go and all. Who stays? Like scouts who continue to tell you that, get to make their recommendations and so forth. It's why things don't change in organization. You're telling me that somehow the Detroit Lions can't have a 1,000-yard back since Barry Sanders. That's not like that's. You want to talk about conspiracies? Like at that point, it's got to be human error. It's not an accident anymore.
It's a good point.
I think it is good point. Because they've got some scouts who need to go. That's why they're not winning. I don't even know if it's the coaching or the general manager. It's because these scouts have been there for 20 years making the same dang recommendations, and they need to go. And every now and then they do go if they get big enough, like the vice president, director of player personnel type of thing, they might go. But that same area scout is telling you that cornerbacks from some Power 10s, Power 5 school, they're doing well. We got to take he's telling every dang coach that comes through there, regardless of philosophy, you got to take these guys, and it's the same dang guys. Anyway, that's just the way I see it.
It's interesting you say that about Detroit because I have DeAndre Swift on my fantasy football team. I just put him down to the bench at this point. So thanks for that little pro tip.
You're like, wait, hang on a second. Let me get my fantasy football team real quick.
But then by the same token, it's like other organizations are just known by their position groups. Like for some reason, Chicago's always got a linebacker.
Yep, always. How is that?
They've always had a linebacker. Like
the other thing I will say, I'll add one more thought to this. Brandon Staley's getting a lot of heat, and I am going to do a video tomorrow about Brandon Staley and kind of the heat he's getting. Look, this is his second year, and I think part of the reason why he's getting so much heat is he's brought in so much talent, and all of it has failed to this point so far, right? Yeah. Khalil Mack is having a decent season, but he only had 3 sacks the first week and got nothing the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And, J.C. Jackson's not panning out so far, right? List goes on and on. And, the amount of money that has spent on this team, it's going to start becoming a business conversation at some point, right? Getting butts in seats, fans being happy. That's what they need to see. And so, yeah, it really is an interesting conversation. So anyhow, I know there's one or two more questions, and I know we want to be mindful of your time here, Mark.
Yeah,
well, yeah, because we got to get to the autograph session afterwards.
That's right.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, we got one more from Aether here.
Okay.
He asks, how Davis Mills prepared to face how is Davis Mills prepared to face the Bolts secondary, especially if JC Jackson plays?
I don't know. He's going to go out there and check down. I mean,
yeah.
So I'm not worried about Davis Mills versus their secondary. Excuse me, I'm having a paroxysm here. No, it's going to be. Oh, look, J.C. Jackson has Brandon Cook covered. Here, Rex Burkhead.
Yep.
There. That's how it's going to be. It is, like I said, Mills, his philosophy is can't go broke turning a profit. So long as he's not turning the ball over and possessions are ending in a punt or a kick, then theoretically Houston should be in the game to win. And they are in the fourth quarter. That is why they have been in the fourth quarter. But, dude, take a chance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah. At some point, you got to let it loose, to your point, right? And, again, I go back to the Jacksonville game, right? Trevor Lawrence didn't do anything especially crazy. I think they ran 75 plays against us. In my last video, guys, if you haven't watched it, watch that video, Death by 1,000 Cuts, right? We just got chopped up, little minor stabs, little paper cuts across the board. I mean, one of the scoring drives they had was like 16 plays. Another one was like 12 plays, right? These are long, sustained drives that they just kept beating us on. And guess who was making our tackles? Our corners, right? These are guys that are supposed to be in coverage, and they were making they were making the sacks, or the tackles, I should say. So, it's one of those situations that, if you do the check down, yeah, you're right. It's going to get you 5 yards, but at some point you do got to start unleashing it. And that's why a lot of people like Justin Herbert, right? Because he's not afraid to throw the rock, right? And so, but again, you got to question his accuracy with that rib injury as well too. So,
again, to make a Tinder analogy, at some point you got to meet the girls.
There you go. There you go.
Doing if he's just continuing to swipe right and talk, he's not meeting anybody.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, we're doing this.
Tried to meet somebody, you get stood up, and Roquan Smith is there. I understand that, but at some point you got to take the chance and meet up, and he's not doing that.
It's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah,
I like
very
that.
good point. Very good point.
And again, Davis Mills, he's been in the league for, correct me wrong, is it 2 or 3 years at this point? 2. Okay.
2.
Yeah. So, and again, I think with younger quarterbacks, I think you see that a lot, right? The check down's the easy play, but you're right. He's got to make a chance out there. And again, to get the big bucks as a quarterback in the league and to stay relevant in the league, you got to get some fourth quarter comeback wins, show people you're a baller, right? The only people that get brought up in that discussion are people that are going to come back and make, fourth quarter drives and win games, right? So if he's not doing that, he's not doing that. So, okay. Any other questions here, Kyle, before we wrap up?
That's it. That's all. That was the last one. All
right. Okay. Well, Mark, I will say this. It's been a pleasure having you on. And honestly, I think everyone really has enjoyed, getting your point of view. This has been great. I really loved your animation and just the information you've had. Really,
I couldn't have anybody on if you're going to do the video, if you're not going to be animated.
Yeah.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yep. That's true.
He's going to sit like this the whole time.
I mean, look at Kyle, for example. Look at his get up. Like, you've got to match that with your energy. You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
He got the patches on and everything.
Got the patches, got the shades, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
The whole deal.
Right.
Now, but I'll just say this, Mark. This will be an exciting game. And I thought a lot about this today. Kyle and I and James, we talked. This is going to be a big test for both of us, right? We got a lot of young players that are going to be in very key positions. The offensive line battle is going to be big. And I've said this year over year, right? Or this year specifically, if we can get a pass rush on Davis Mills, I think things are going to go well for us. Because secondarily, bottom line, our corners are very good. We're going to cover your guys fairly well. But if we can put some pressure on Davis Mills and get him to get a little happy feet, I think we'll be in good shape. So we'll see how that goes.
Happy feet say it'll be more sack fumble type territory. I mean, really, it will. Because he's not going to make that decision to chuck the ball. Because he's going to know J.C. Jackson and your second and Derwin James and so forth. He's going to be aware of that. So it's going to be a sack fumble type of situation.
He holds the ball do you think he holds the ball over 2 seconds in the pocket on average?
Yeah.
Yep. So
hopefully there's no consequence if I'm wrong with that.
Yeah. Exactly right. Well, it's interesting because I did a video on this a while ago that most of the better quarterbacks, like Tom Brady, his average is 1.5 seconds is how long he holds the ball. So he distributes the ball quick, gets it out fast.
I discovered in doing really both of them, but Texans 100 is initially when I found that stat of pocket time or time to throw, whatever it is, like, oh wow, that's bad. This quarterback here, he's only got 2 seconds of pocket time. But then you notice, there's an element of quick release to this. So
sure,
this could be a good stat.
Yep.
And we're looking at it incorrectly.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Davis Mills is there's no quick release. There's a hesitation. There's a hitch. And you just got to let it go. Like I said, you've got to meet the people. They may stand you up, but you've got to meet the people.
That's right. And you got to ask the question, is it on like Donkey Kong? What's the deal here? We doing this? No pants dance? Is this happening? Right. I had to say it.
Yeah, and seriously, that is, I think, the frustration with Texans fans is with the previous quarterback situation, there was no hesitation.
Yeah.
There was an intention, whether by scramble or throw, to get the first down, to make the play. Yep. And it's more calculated and risk assessment with Davis Mills, and that's just frustrating. I mean, it worked in 1982. I mean, Joe Gibbs would like this. I get it. But it's not working in today's NFL where they've made every rule since Peyton Manning's career, to get the passing game to be the big deal.
Yep.
That just doesn't work anymore.
Agreed. That's why corners are such a premium and wide receivers are so important, right? And agreed.
Yeah.
Well, we have one last question here. DZ just threw it out there. We can wrap on this one real quick.
What is it? Just like when you get a genie and you wish for infinite wishes? Like, the last question can I ask for infinite questions?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is it. Yeah. So, is Mills closer to Carr or Lawrence?
As far as release time goes.
Yep.
I'm not even sure. I was trying to find that metric that we had, bro. Like where it was, it showed that whole that dot chart, whatever. But I can't find it actually.
Yeah, I would say probably Carr. Carr holds the ball quite a bit. He's about 2.5 seconds on average.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah. So I would probably say Carr in my opinion. But again, this will be an interesting game. I think this is the test for both teams, right? I think
it really is kind of a must-win game, and it's one that's really going to set the This is a reputation game. Let me say that.
Yep.
Because if you all come out of this 1-3, then it's going to be, well, the Chargers are just failing to meet expectations and so forth. If Houston comes out of this 0-3-1, which, by the way, they're still winners, as a matter of fact, because ties count as half win, half loss. So there's winning percentage involved.
Yep.
Then it'll be, well, the Levy Smith experiment didn't work. Why isn't he going to get fired at the end of the year? And Davis Mills needs to go. That's going to be, and those are the storylines that'll never go away the whole season. I mean, theoretically, I think the Chargers would have a better chance of dispelling their storyline if they catch a win streak or something. But just at that point, that's it. That's what every team will have to overcome.
Well, interesting. Well, it'll be exciting to see. I'm excited to see this game this week. So we'll definitely be in touch. I'm sure I'll be messaging you during the game. Are you going to be at the game, by the way?
No. No.
Okay.
Command center.
Watching the game. Well, good. Well, we'll be in touch. I'm excited to get your thoughts on the game as it progresses. And, thank you so much again for your time, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I know everybody out there is appreciative of your time as well, too. But thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. And as always, bolt up. See you guys in the next one.
Woo! Let's go.